Good evening and welcome to tonight's Yuba City Council Forum, Candidates Forum, brought to you by the Yuba City Chamber of Commerce. My name is Carolyn Kirby and I am the current chair of Government Affairs, our local government affairs. Tonight's, my glasses on. I don't have a prompter, everybody gets a teleprompter. Jeez Louise. Okay, want me to start over?
Yeah, you will. Just
Okay, fine.
and go. You're ready.
Good evening and welcome to the Yuba City City Council Candidates Forum brought to you tonight by the Yuba City Chamber of Commerce. My name is Carolyn Kirby and I am the local chair for the Government Affairs. Tonight we'd like to extend a special thank you to the City of Yuba City, Diane Langley, and her staff for securing this facility. The forum will consist of Yuba City Council candidates, District 5, Tony Cole, John Buckland. I want to thank everybody who is viewing us on live stream. Vincenzo Carrazza, a human proxy, will be running an experiment for the Yuba City Council District 5. He's volunteered to run a district democracy experiment by entering as a candidate on the ballot. Unlike your traditional representative democracy model, where a person would seek an election so they can go to City Hall, state legislature, council, Congress, etc., represent or act on behalf of their constituents, a direct democracy model uses a proxy that allows the constituents themselves to vote, decline, act on all legislative matters. Each candidate will have 90 seconds for opening statement, and then we will have our committee and our audience members, questions from our committee and our audience members. If you'd like a question to be considered, we have cards in the back. If you want to raise your hand, we'll get them to you. Make sure that please be sure that your questions are brief and address all candidates, as we cannot accept questions for individual candidates. Please be aware that we already have dozens of questions. And if we don't get to your question, we apologize. Each candidate will have 1 minute to answer each question. Rebuttals will be allowed if there is a reference to a particular opposing candidate. Another candidate's answer, these rebuttals will be allowed up to 30 seconds. At the end of the questions, each candidate will have 2 minutes for closing statements. No rebuttals will be allowed. Candidates, please direct your attention to Jackie Lee. She is our timekeeper. She has 3 signs, one for 30 seconds, one for 15, and the last one to let you know that your time is up. Please be respectful of everybody's time and stay within your time limit. Again, we would like to thank those who joined us here this evening. We appreciate that you are interested in learning more about our candidates. I'd like to extend a special thank you to those who worked to put this forum together: Janelle Willis, Jackie Lee, Celeste Brown, Robert Bendorf. Tonight's moderators are Robert Bendorf, retired county executive, and Janelle Willis, executive director of the Yuba City Chamber of Commerce. At this point, I will be turning this over to the moderators, Robert Bendorf and Janelle Willis.
Over to Janelle for some opening remarks.
Thank you guys very much all for coming. The way it will work, we will start each question with one different, and then we'll go through the lineup. So are you guys ready? Yeah, we're going to start with introductions. We'll start with you, Tony.
Okay, so thank you so much for hosting this, Chamber, Janelle, Jackie, Robert. Thank you everyone for coming. Citizens of District 5, special thank you to you if you're here. My name's Tony Cole. I'm running for an open seat on the District 5 City Council. I'm a proud lifelong Yuba City resident. And my parents came here in the 60s by way of the Air Force through their parents. I went to April Lane, Terrabuena, Sutter High School, then Chico. I've traveled pretty extensively, but did leadership pretty much my whole life in various capacities. I am now a teacher locally for the past 12 years at Yuba City Charter School, where I teach economics, government, geography, and history. So why am I running? Who doesn't want to be under the scrutiny or microscope for 4 years? All roads really, I feel, have led me to here. I've spent my whole life loving and learning about, and now dedicated a career to teaching about this country. And so civic virtue is very important to me, and I think American values are very much worth being defended. And having been to 4 of the 5 stated communist nations, I feel I can say that with some authority. And I suppose I'll get more on my platform later as I'm out of time.
Go ahead, Vincenzo.
Great. Well, I'll make this quick because as you mentioned before, I'm running an experiment. So I have a statement and I will be leaving the forum. So good evening. My name is Vincenzo Garraza. I want to start off by thanking the Chamber of Commerce for setting up tonight's candidate forum. As mentioned before, it's meant to get to know the candidates that are running so voters can be informed as to who would be best to represent them. Well, I don't fit the mold as I volunteered to run as a proxy candidate to implement a direct democracy experiment. Let me use my time to quickly explain what that means, and then I'll let you get back to the program to understand what the other candidates are who are seeking to represent District 5. So unlike your traditional representative democracy, where you pick a person to go to City Hall, state legislature, or Congress to act on your behalf, a direct democracy model is where you, the citizens, get to directly participate in government. So with today's technological advances, it's now possible. Think smartphones and polling, all right? How I would fit in this as your human proxy is to act as a conduit so that people in District 5 can decide directly on legislative actions. So here's a concrete example. At the September 17th, 2024 City Council meeting, the Council voted to endorse Measure D, the 1% tax measure. It was a unanimous decision by the elected council members. A proxy council member would just poll District 5 and say, what do you guys think? How should I vote? If 50% of them says no, then the proxy candidate votes no. So that's an idea. That's something that District 5 wants to try out. Vote for yourself. Vote for me for a human proxy. If the experiment doesn't work out, you can vote for me to stop the experiment. Otherwise, I encourage people to look for the representative type of democracy, which there are 2 fine candidates up here. With that, I thank you for your time and good luck with the event.
Thank you for that. John, your turn.
Thank you very much, and I appreciate this opportunity that the Chamber has brought forward to have a discussion about filling the future seat here for District 5 in Yuba City. I'm John Buckland. I have previously served on the council. I served 8 years, and I am a long-term resident, not lifelong, resident of Yuba City. I have lived in District 5 for over 35 years. I worked for the Yuba City Police Department, retiring in 2010 as a police lieutenant, and have fairly extensive knowledge of city operations, how the inner workings of our city move, how those wheels move, and how to speak with our community members, and also understanding the passion that folks have out in District 5 for making things a little bit better. So just by being able to walk and talk, through the community, raising my family in District 5, grandkids go to school down in that area. It is with great understanding that we do have to have somebody that can have the values put forth to really improve our city through their actions. Thank you.
It's been a while since I pressed the speak button on a microphone, so I've got to get back into it somehow. Well, first of all, thank you both for being here, and thanks for everyone for being here tonight at the council chambers. So we look forward to a good, robust question and answer session. And first things first, a little housekeeping. If you don't mind, instead of candidate Buckland or candidate Cole, would you mind Tony and John? Is that okay? Better that way? You can call me whatever you want. Just, yeah. well, within reason, of course. So we have a series of questions that we'd like to go ahead and begin asking, and I think we did a coin toss, and it didn't have a winner there. It was an NFL coin toss, so we decided to start with Tony, if that's okay. And we'll go with the first question if you are ready. And keep in mind, a minute to answer, and if there is a rebuttal, and each person will have a chance to answer the question, but if there's a rebuttal, 30 seconds. Okay? All right, Tony, first question. Here we go. So the city of Yuba City and Sutter County have proposed a 1% sales tax increase for the residents of Yuba City and, of course, Sutter County. This increase would raise the local sales tax rate to 8.25%. Are you in favor of the sales tax measure? That's the first part of the question. And if it passes, what will you do to ensure the funds generated will go to roads, public safety, and homeless needs that have been identified as priorities by the current city council and the board of supervisors?
Okay, so I am in favor of this tax. I think a lot of the times conservatives, we tend to mistrust any sort of tax. It's misappropriated, it's not transparent, it's often dishonest, and we never see any sort of return on investment. With this one, it is essentially doubling the revenue of our 1% that we do get to keep. We're one of 8 cities that have held out, and in the last 4 years, over 250 cities in our state have had to adopt this. So I really actually commend the fiscal conservatancy of our current council for not doing this yet. There is a citizens oversight committee that will help to designate where this goes. I don't remember the last part of your question. I'm sorry.
That's okay. The last part was, if it does pass, what will you do to ensure the funds generated will go towards roads, public safety, and homeless needs that have been identified as priorities by the current city council and board of supervisors?
So frankly, I'm just a big proponent of being a person of integrity. And when you say you're going to do something, it needs to happen. I believe that this will go towards where it's supposed to go. I know that there's a plan in place already for the road repairs, and fire is something that's very important to the current council too. Maybe I'm naive, but I'm extremely trusting of the intentions of this measure, and that's why I'm in favor of it.
Thank you very much, Tony. John, please. And John, if you'd like me to repeat, I'm more than happy to do that.
I think I have a grasp on what you were asking. My position is fairly simple. I cannot support Measure D as it's currently structured. This is something that you look at that will last forever. And to put this into place for all of the different needs, it's just something that I was watching television last night, and the current mayor said, just straight up, this is his quote: "The city is growing. With that, people need police services, they need fire services, and they need a lot of other amenities. We need to provide." I don't really know what that means. That means that this is just a basket of money that will last for a long time to be able to provide all these things, and means we're not living within the constraints that we have on our current budgets, and we need to focus on raising revenue on an external method, not on a sales tax.
So I have just been informed by our production team. Well, thank you both, first of all, for answering that first question. But our production team has indicated that we will go to 90 seconds for the response to these questions instead of a minute. So you take a little bit of a breath, right? So if anybody would like to take 30 seconds to add to the first question that we talked about, please feel free to do that if you want to, and if not, we'll move on to the next question and start off with you again, Tony.
Okay, I can add a little bit more. I feel like our city in so many ways is like a household. You know, you have to have revenue keeping up with your expenses, and all of us have had to adjust our budgets at home and make hard decisions. And that is where the city's at right now, with insurance, with energy, with all these exorbitant costs. And frankly, not to put blame on the state, but we often can. There's policies and pressure that are just out of control. So I do just feel like in many ways this is a recirculation and we will see the return on investment. So I trust that the tax will be used effectively.
John?
The revenue generated, we're talking about $17.9 million annually. This is a forever fund that goes out there. Some of the funds would be used to build a new fire station. I understand that. That's got a $20 million price tag on it. Money goes to Sutter County Sheriff, goes to the District Attorney. That's about $5.8 million. Funds for homeless, about $1.65 million. And then Yuba City Police and Fire. If we're really concerned about fixing our roads, we can do this with a sales tax, a short-term sales tax initiative, and complete all of the $150 million that they have in deferred maintenance on our roads in about 8.3 years.
Great, thank you, John. Any rebuttals?
I can speak to the fact that at a city level, if we borrow money, bonds, for example, or finances, it's at a much lower rate. And so in order to do a complete revamp of our roads and actually fix them how they should, that's necessary.
And John, any rebuttal to that comment?
I would be in favor of a countywide sales tax that's short-term that would be used to repair streets. The comment, fix our roads, that's out there is a little bit misleading for our community.
Thank you both, and thanks for understanding for the ad hoc change in timing. So we're going to move on to the next question, and I'm going to start off with John for the next question. What will you do on the City Council to promote increased economic prosperity and opportunity for our community? Additionally, what specifically will you do to draw business to our region?
Thank you very much, because that's really core to city growth. Let me go back just when I was on the City Council previously. I worked with down at SACOG to be able to bring funding forward to be able to build the Fifth Street Bridge or rebuild the Fifth Street Bridge. That's a big part of economic development. It opened up and allowed for a hotel to be built. That's income that's being generated at that hotel level. And there's also other ground there that Mehmet Noyan can build on. So those are some of the things that we need to do when a business like Costco comes around. We don't push them across the bridge to another location. We need to work with them. We need to meet with them. Pete's, the restaurant here in town, when they came in, they were right over here in City Hall one day, and there were restrictions in place. You have to work. You have to work with them. You have to get those restrictions lifted. And in this case, it was an easement that was held by the city for utilities. You have to get that out of the way. You have to cut through the red tape, and you have to make it more a little easier for people to navigate the system and also get in here and start building businesses.
Great. Thank you, John. Tony, I'll repeat. Okay. So what will you do on the City Council to promote increased economic prosperity and opportunity for our community? Additionally, what specifically will you do to draw business to our region?
So development is how we attract business and revenue. It's what keeps people here in a city. And part of my platform is re-engaging, especially the youth. We have a generation of young men that they're graduating with no skills and don't have the tools for gainful employment. But I feel like if we can start to shift that, we're going to see a lot more young people either staying here or returning here after college. So I think about our downtown specifically, maybe even building up residents restaurants on top, having more mixed-use areas there. I understand, again, I'm putting blame on the state, but there's so many barriers to entry of people wanting to do business, and of course buy homes too. I think that those are two specific topics that I would like to do what I can to even just change the ship 1 degree and making things a little bit easier for people to purchase homes and businesses, but keeping people here. And so thinking in terms, for example, of like in my district, 23% of us are, it might be the whole city actually, are single people, like we are living alone. And so to attract first-time home buyers that will stay here, spend their money here, I want to be a place where people go, like a Lincoln or a Rockland or a Folsom, not a place people pass through. Thank you. Mm-hmm.
So prosperity really, I'm a small business owner. And so we kind of went out of a mold. We broke that mold and we opened up something that brings people to town. I get visitors from Oregon and from Nevada on a pretty regular basis. And it brings young people together, brings families together. It's how our community needs to look forward and to also thrive into the future.
Great. Thank you, John. And Tony, any rebuttal?
Not necessarily a rebuttal, but I'll take the chance to mention District 5 specifically. It would be really nice to see grocery stores down there, bars, restaurants, places where, like I said, people that keep people here instead of leaving and going out of town to spend their money.
Great. Thank you, Tony. All right. Well, we'll move on with the next question. And Tony, we will start with you. You ready? So our local governments are continuing to see more state and federal regulations restricting our business community and harming economic opportunities. What will you do in your role at City Council to fight back against these burdensome regulations?
Oh, my mic's on already. So this does go back again to like the first piece of my platform. I think a lot of it's educating voters that like when you go to the voting poll, you know what you're voting for. We have to try at a local level to change the policies of the state. So that's very important to me, just education. But I mean, locally, I was just talking about impact fees earlier. Like, is there some way that we can minimize impact fees? A builder spends almost $60,000 before breaking ground on a house just in fees, sewer, water, everything. And that, I think that's extremely unacceptable. We have to be a place that, like I said, is attractive and a place that is where you're able to open businesses and build a new home.
Great. Thank you, Tony. John?
Restrictions. That's the dirty word for trying to get any type of governmental agencies moving forward as city to be prosperous. You really have to work with our federal legislators, our state legislators. When we were building the Fifth Street Bridge, we were a little bit shocked that there were roadblocks just from regulations to be able to do that. And one of those was controlled by NOAA. No, not the one you're thinking of. It's the National Aeronautic and Ocean branch that really controlled the Feather River. So we couldn't even get into the Feather River to build that bridge during certain times of the year. So those regulations, the way that we got around that was by going to our federal partners back in Washington, D.C., and meeting with representatives at NOAA to be able to extend our building program a month either direction. And that was done by, quite frankly, John Garamendi helped us tremendously in getting that done. And I know our other federal partners are more than willing to help us try to get rid of some of that friction so you can move forward.
Thank you, John. And I just wanted to mention, too, that before I ask for rebuttal, so rebuttals are really designed that, and they'll be allowed certainly in this forum, if there's a reference to a particular opposing candidate and another candidate's answer. But please feel free to use the rebuttal process, and then you'll also have an opportunity at the end of the debate tonight to add on to anything in your closing remarks. So I'm going to go back to Tony. Rebuttal to John's comments on this question.
Not at the moment.
Okay.
Something will come to mind after this is over.
Thank you. All right, so we're going to move on to our next question, and John, we will start with you. So flooding and flood insurance is a major issue for our region. What steps will you take at the city to ensure that our levee system is properly prepared and shored up for the future?
Thank you for the question. Having sat on the Sutter Butte Flood Control Agency in the past, this is a critical component for us. We really need to look at our levees still to the west of us to be able to work on those levees, to get those completely rebuilt. I believe that this is truly the federal departments that need to come up with the funding for that. But we need to work on it. We rebuilt in the hundreds of the $350 million worth of work to be able to put in new slurry walls all the way from Thermalito all the way down past Yuba City to be able to shore up our levees and stop the seepage that was affecting businesses. One of those businesses was a Golden Valley Auto Body. The levee right behind them seeped underneath. It had been repaired previously by the feds. When it rained and the water came up, that water would move underneath that levee and would flood out that business. So we worked locally here to be able to take care of that. And then we were able to work with our federal partners to get that levee rebuilt. And just a number of people helped, and it was Doug Lamalfa and some of the others that really helped us with that.
Thank you, John. Tony, would you like me to repeat the question? Sure, okay. Flooding and flood insurance is a major issue for our region. What steps will you take at the city to ensure that our levee system is properly prepared and shored up for the future?
It's so dim, I can't really tell if it's on or off. So I do feel this is, and I'm not an expert on this topic, I'll admit, but I do also know that this is a joint effort. Like the jurisdiction on fixing levees is county, state, federal. I would speak to the need for reservoirs to put less pressure on our levees when those times come where we need to not only store water, but prevent too much from coming downstream. In regards to any specifics, I just feel like, again, it goes down to education on, and also flexibility in working with all of these other agencies at every level. That's what I can say right now on that.
Great. Thank you, Tony. And John, any rebuttal to Tony's remarks?
I have nothing to add to it. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, well, we will move on to our next question, and back to you, Tony. Do you see areas where the city government is overspending? If so, what would you like to see cut in the city budget?
So there are times to be critical of this city and any other city, and I know that those times are going to come for me. I have a few things, but I have met in the last 6 weeks with 18 different people, and my question specifically has been about budget, because I do understand that if you're on council, your decisions are consequential for every citizen at some level. And again, based on my conversations with these people, I think that we are so well equipped in this city with a team that has integrity on the staff level and the council level. And I really do believe them when they're telling me, you know, we had this ad hoc committee, we're putting the budget together. We were asked, what do you need, not what do you want? And let's keep it minimum. Like, don't ask for the world, you know? And every single person I met with, I could see in their face that they meant what they said and there was emotion behind it. Like, these people care about our city. They care about the direction it goes. And this budget, I mean, according to a grand jury, would be our grand jury, Yuba City's in trouble if, you know, we don't do something. But I feel like at the moment there's not overspending.
Thank you, Tony. John? John, would you like me to repeat the question? You got it?
No, I'm good with the question. You know, there's a lot of things that come into play, and these are difficult times. The economy is not at its most robust time right now. So we do need to look at how can we save some money, how we cannot go into deficit budgeting, not relying on our reserve funds to be able to get us through. And those costs, some of them you just can't do much with. Our public safety consumes about 66% of the budget, and that includes their pay. That's of the general fund budget, I should say, and the retirement that's in place for all of those. And so there's not a lot of room where we can cut. But I think what we have to really focus on is what can we do? Where are the investments we can make to be able to draw business here, to be able to get that revenue source coming in, short of going out to ask the local residents to pay more in tax. We need businesses to come forward. We need to encourage that, and we need to build on that.
Thank you, John. And Tony, any rebuttal?
I'll just speak briefly to the healthy cities portion of our reserves. There's almost 8 million there and 5 in reserves. There's money in other areas as well. So I do think that despite we have a few million to make up, there's a lot of responsible saving going on and a plan to close that gap.
Thank you, Tony. John, any rebuttal to that comment? Great. Thank you. All right. So, John, we will start with you for this question. So, Proposition 36 is a voter-led initiative on the ballot to increase the punishment for theft and other crimes due to Proposition 47. What is your position on Proposition 36, Part 1? Part 2, how would you tackle the increased theft we are seeing locally?
The latter part was the increased.
Yeah, how would you tackle the increased theft we are seeing locally?
Okay. Proposition 36 is long overdue. And the voters, without passing this, all we're doing is continuing to slide down a very slippery slope of just decriminalizing and continuing to decriminalize activities. We need to look at every ability here locally to secure our businesses, making sure that we are enforcing that. We have to have consequences for their actions. The dollar amounts that you see in businesses closing up, shuttering things like Walgreens in different cities and so forth, are not the answer to the criminal activities that are going on. We have to take that step. We have to move forward with this, and quite frankly, do everything we possibly can on the prosecution side to bring these folks to justice and make them bear for their, what they're doing to our state and to our country. So.
Thank you, John. And Tony, let me repeat that question as two parts. So, Prop 36 is a voter-led initiative on the ballot to increase the punishment for theft and other crimes due to Proposition 47. What is your position on Proposition 36? And how would you tackle the increased theft we are seeing locally?
So I'm an emphatic yes on Prop 36. It is hopefully going to help fix a generation. I know I keep going back to this whole idea of education and generation, but I've been in education for 17 years and I see all the problems as they're potentially unraveling. And this sounds a little bit harsh, but if families and our schools are not doing what they should, it has to be through law and order. A law was just passed recently in California that teachers can't keep a kid in on their recess if they're misbehaving. Like, we are at a place where there's no consequences, and the law seems to be on the side of the suspect and the criminal. And this is it's an endorsement to perpetuate all of the crime. These kids are looking at crime like, well, I can do this and get away with it, versus I'm so paranoid and freaked out to do that. There's not a chance I would try it. And we have to have a society. I mean, I've been to some countries where the punishment is harsh. I believe in due process and fair trials, but there's very minimal criminal activity because there are consequences. So I would specifically, this speaks again to the tax, but we have to have Prop 36 pass, and then we also have to have our jail properly staffed and the DA properly staffed to help prosecute these guys.
Thank you, Tony. John, any rebuttal?
The only rebuttal I have is, trying to, and Tony's in education. I have two daughters that are school teachers, and the lack of consequences throughout the system is the root of all evil. And there's just no way to fix it without getting a little bit more harsh with our prosecutions. We need to take that step and make sure that we also have some way to ensure that there's not recidivism in continued activities.
Thank you, John. And Tony, any rebuttal to that statement?
I think I would just add that, that's where this option comes in. You can go to rehab or you can go to jail, and sometimes people have to hit rock bottom before they get better. And this speaks to some degree to the drug epidemic too. They need to sometimes find God and sobriety when they're in jail, and people often do, and they hit rock bottom and they thrive after that. And so some people think that's not a compassionate proposition to support, but I think it is, actually. It'll help people in the long term.
Thank you very much. All right, and we will go to the next question, and we are going to start with you, Tony. Homeless continues to be a major problem around our region. With the Supreme Court ruling on Grants Pass v. Johnson, what steps will you take to clean up homeless encampments and enforce local ordinances? And then there's a second part. Additionally, how will you address the issue of homelessness in our region? Probably can be covered by the first part, but you get it.
I'll probably speak all jumbled up anyway. So in terms of addressing the homelessness and local measures we can take, I do know that our chief of police and the police themselves need a little bit more clarity on the Grants Pass decision, because I think it's great our Supreme Court passed that, requiring people to find shelter versus making oftentimes our parks and roads and private property very dirty and messy. I don't think that's cruel and unusual punishment by any stretch. But I feel like whatever we can do as a council to help the police and chief give proper consequences, but right now there's a little bit of gray area for them. So it might be a waiting period on that. In terms of what we can do, I know that Project Minor is something I would support. I feel like if people need help and they need to go to the hospital and there's people without shelter filling up the hallways and the rooms there, that's extremely problematic. So I would be in favor of, that short-term facility. Having spoken with Habitat and John Nicoletti pretty extensively, there's about 4 steps for getting out of homelessness currently, maybe 5, and there's so many resources out there. So we do want to help the people that want to help themselves. And so that's obviously where Project Major could potentially come in, and places like Merriment Village. There are a lot of resources. So I would be in favor of helping, but not just giving, because that doesn't help people.
Great. Thank you, Tony. And John, if I may, homelessness continues to be a major problem around our region. With the Supreme Court ruling on Grants Pass v. Johnson, what steps will you take to clean up homeless encampments and enforce local ordinances? Additionally, how will you address the issue of homelessness in our region?
First, I really believe that the issue is far deeper and wider than what a city, a county can handle. This is a statewide problem. This has been perpetuated by our governor. The city he came from is the model for homelessness, and they only clean it up when they have something to try to show off, to try to showcase something. Homelessness is really in so many different categories, whether it be the mental illness component, the drug component, just falling on hard times. That happens, and people lose their home, and they're no longer have a place to lay their head down. Those are tough, and so we do need to have programs. I don't think it should be a city-funded activity, short of moving people away from businesses where these folks in front of my own business, I clean up disgusting stuff. I'll just be frank. There's feces out there, they pee out there, they bathe out in front of my business, and that's not very good for a family entertainment center. And I talk to these folks. I'm not hard with them. I just try to get them to move on. And that's something that we need to do is put together and support things like Project Hope through Adventist Ride Out and move forward with making some impact in our community.
I think, again, I would just speak to the youth and how we can be proactive. We have so many people. I ask my students, what are your hopes and dreams? And they're extremely lethargic. And that's very scary to me, that's the kind of energy I'm getting. So again, I think it's about giving these young people, equipping them with tools and skills and purposefulness, the wherewithal to have great work ethic and be industrious and produce. That's what gives people their purpose. And that in many times it's prevention for people getting homeless in the first place.
Well, I really think that the programs that are out there oftentimes just shuffle folks around, and we need to stop with that type of activity. We need to really work on wraparound services that are available. Again, this is not a government-funded program. This can be done through the nonprofits, and we need to support those and cut the red tape to be able to get them into projects where we can support that.
Great. Thank you, John. So having said that, I am taking my first official break and turn it over to Janelle for the next 2 questions. So, and I'm going to repeat that. I'm taking my first official, my microphone wasn't on, which is probably not a bad thing depending on who you ask, but I'm going to take just a quick break, and I'm going to turn over to Janelle for the next 2 questions that we have for you.
We do want to clarify the ones that we had were prepared. These are the ones from the audience here today. John, we'll start with you on this one. What qualities do you appreciate in your elected officials? And the second part, and what qualities do you hope to demonstrate?
Integrity is first and foremost. Being truthful, being responsive, being able to meet with people at their level, and to try to understand, not legislate things for them, but try to understand what their needs are, and to try to move forward on a very productive level and on a personal level. That's what city council members do. They are at the lowest level that you can have, and be able to be responsive to what individuals' needs are, but also have that integrity and be a person of your word.
Tony, would you like me to repeat that?
I think I got it.
Okay, girl.
So again, I think this speaks to my passion for our principles in this country, our Constitution, federalism, the structure of republicanism and representative government. I really just appreciate when people understand the task. You know, we're representing other people, not our own agenda. I really reject people, representatives who are running to overcome some fear or because it's on their bucket list, or I don't know, there's some other aspiration, or they have a negative agenda tied to it. It's very self-serving. And we do have to understand that this is a responsibility where a lot of work is tied. And so some things I appreciate very much in leaders are that humility, first and foremost. Of course, integrity is always up at the top too. And really a person who's going to do the research and investigate. You know, we have about 4 or 5 days before any agenda to do that research. And just speaking to each meeting, it's really important that we do the work and are prepared to work with others to make progress at every meeting.
Anything to add, John?
I would just simply add that, you know, Sutter County tried to run a tax measure 2 years ago, and at the very same time, we had a council that publicly stated that they were in fine fiscal shape, and there was no need for a tax measure at that point. And then months later, they went right onto paper and started trying to push forward the current Measure D.
Tony?
So I can't speak to specifics on that, but I feel like coming out of almost 3 years of COVID and a pandemic and that sort of pressure is extremely difficult. And some of the real issues and the real potential challenges didn't catch up. So when you really put things on paper, as in the ad hoc budget committee and looking at all the different dynamics, I think that our current council did quite well in holding out as long as they did.
Great. Tony, we're going to start this next question with you as well. What are the major problems in your District 5? And the second part to be that, what do you feel are the problems in the city?
So when I was making my list, the District 5 issues are really, truly also citywide. I'll speak specifically, though, to District 5. The roads are really bad. Garden Highway's horrible. And there's some big companies that have big trucks that are wanting to come in there, and I don't know if that's the best idea. So in terms of fixing the roads, that's a big one. Our dog park needs a lot of help down there. And I think probably the largest potential project I would love to see happen is that Shanghai area. There's so many homeless down there, and they are causing problems for the neighbors, the people who live along the levee. There's one story of a man that, you know, politely asked people to move from behind his fence, and they came back with like something on fire and threw it into his yard. And that is completely unacceptable. In the last quality of life survey, I think 82% of people spoke to like their lack of feeling safe and secure. And so those are some issues. I know that people have also spoken about schools in my district. Maybe we need another school or school improvements. And then of course the cost of living is huge citywide. That's a massive problem and challenge for us. And then finally just growth. I think for my district and probably all of them, we could potentially grow and see new businesses come in.
John?
Well, I don't disagree on too many of these points. So unfortunately, things like Garden Highway from Lincoln Road all the way down to Stewart is in really poor shape. That's a fairly new road, built in approximately 1990. The street in front of my house was built long before that and doesn't have the type of damage that you see. We're just a matter of months from that being a gravel road, and that is really hard to watch. The homeless issues, they're there. People canvassing the area out late at night, not being impeded. The graffiti, I'm one of these guys in my neighborhood. I went and bought color matched paint for the fences, and because I don't like gray on brown, I'm a little bit, I guess a little bit, I won't use the word, but yeah, the quality has to be there when you go and cover this stuff up. Unregulated businesses. We have these pop-ups that come out on Friday, Saturday, and Sunday that are cooking on the side of the street, and that's something that has to be addressed. That's a miss on sales tax issues, and certainly the individual that's selling alcohol out of their garage down on the south end is also something that needs to be addressed. Theft down in the Epley Burns area is constant. People are always having to address that, and traffic is another big issue. They constantly are complaining about people speeding through their neighborhoods.
Tony, do you have something to add to that?
Maybe I would just add that Shanghai, again, I mean, there's so much potential down there for maybe, I'm a runner. I would love to be able to run on the levee again and feel safe. But just that park area beyond, there's some potential there. And I know that the neighbors down there would like to feel safe taking their dogs or children over there. So that's a huge need. And it could even be a recreational project one day. So that's maybe a long-term vision.
John? I'm going to turn it back over to Robert.
Okay, unfortunately, you're stuck with me again. So here we go. So we'll start off with John on this question. Pretty simple. I think both of you may have answered this already, but how long have you lived in District 5?
Well, thank you. I've lived in District 5 for over 35 years. I lived on Railroad at one time, 817 Railroad. I lived in the Grove Apartments for a short period of time. And then my wife and I decided to have a house built down on LeGrand at 1478 LeGrand. And that's been 33 years ago that we built that home. It's a great neighborhood. And so we're very fortunate to be able to walk in our area. We have a lot of people that engage in walking down there. They use our street for it. So you get to know a lot of folks that are trying to stay on the healthy side, but it certainly is a great way just to meet people and to really enjoy what we have on that side of town. And it's also 10 minutes closer to the airport if you need to get out of town.
Thank you, John. Tony?
I'm allowed to agree, right? Sometimes. I'm all about the airport being very close. And so District 5. Okay, so I've only lived down in District 5 3 years. Lived in District 1 the rest of my life.
Great. Thank you, Tony. John, any response?
No.
I just hear agreement is what I hear. So Tony, we will start with you for this question. So how would you respond to District 5 constituents who don't support specific growth, such as apartment complexes, being built in their district while it is desperately needed?
Yeah, I think the hesitation people have with apartment complexes with a lot of units, it sometimes comes down to management of that complex. I would like to help convince people to be in favor of it just simply because of the cost of living in our state. It's just exorbitant. I have 2 jobs. I've been a teacher a long time, and I think that the barriers to entry on buying a home are really, really rough. And there are really good people that rent apartments. And I think the misconception is that there's not. And there's certainly very poorly ran apartment complexes, which allow all sorts of cars, 14 adults to live in a 2-bedroom place. I mean, that's not okay ever. And so I think I would probably speak to that, the management style of the apartment, and assuming that the project isn't causing too many externalities, I would be for it too. Property owners have a right to do what they wish with their property. And if we are attracting people with jobs and in many cases careers, like in most cities, apartments are being occupied by professionals. And so there's nothing wrong with that.
Thank you, Tony. John?
Apartments are affordable living for many, and it's also a desired, way to live, especially with the younger generations now. They don't like mowing lawns. They don't like, taking care of things outside, and certainly have an adverse liking to doing any type of maintenance. So they leave it to the apartment owners to do that. Down in District 5, Aztec Properties, John Ochepeni had a site that was proposed, and actually they started cutting the ground quite a few years ago, right next to the Gumtree Trailer Park. And so we worked with John to be able to try to interface that into the residential community around that, and put in some screening and certainly make sure that it wasn't intrusive, to the backing up to residential areas. That project hasn't moved forward, but we do have a tremendous amount of apartments down in that area. We have some what I would consider luxury apartments, and we also have some entry-level apartments. My son lives in one of those, and it's an affordable way to get into living on your own. For God's sake, he was 30 years old before he moved out of my house into an apartment. So God bless the apartments.
Thank you, John. And Tony, anything to add? Thank you. All right, this is the last question that we have for us here. And we will start off with John. John, what are some unique needs in District 5 that you hope to address?
Well, we need to continue to work on one of the pieces of the city infrastructure is the wastewater treatment facility. And when I first came on the council and living in that area, if anybody's been there for, 10, 15 years, on a hot evening, you smelled what the product was. We used to windrow some of the material and then off-haul it maybe every 6 months. And when it got wet and it got hot, it smelled. That's one of those things that facility needs to be constantly looked at for updating that, and not create any type of issues for the residents. It's better because they daily off-haul that material so it doesn't build up there. Some of the other things are more recreation in that area. Looking at Shanghai, the Shanghai area, being able to maybe work with the county Some of that is covered by the state of California through Fish and Game, and there's river access down there, and some of that really needs to be enhanced and made so people can go there on a regular basis and recreate down in that area.
Thank you, John. Tony, unique needs in District 5 that you hope to address?
So probably the most unique one, it's nothing I haven't already spoken to, but we do need a grocery store down there. I feel like we need retail space and maybe some restaurants and bars, just places where people can go, like I said, so they don't leave the town and do it somewhere else. So that's like unique to District 5, but I think an acute need, it's needed in all the districts, but I think people don't realize they don't realize the quality of life they could have sometimes because it's like all they ever knew. So with just the sense of an entire generation, maybe their parents not feeling like they can go outside and play into dark and just be free, like the homelessness is a big issue. And so I do think quality of life and just the feeling of security and safety will improve if we address that. I can't imagine living along the levee over there and not knowing what's near your backyard every night.
Thank you, Tony. John, anything to add there?
Well, when Tony speaks of not having a grocery store, and this is not an advertisement for them by any stretch of the imagination, but Power Mart is down there. And that's one of those little small operations that you can go early in the morning, late at night, you can get fuel, buy some groceries, some produce. It's not a bad location. It does take time. It takes investment from the outside to be able to do that. So that's, we do have that available in that area. And I'm sure that as the needs are presented, there'll be more opportunity for people to build along those lines.
Thank you, John. And in closing to that question, anything, Tony?
I avoid Tower Mart because it's so expensive.
All right, well, we are at that point in the evening where we would like to hear closing statements from both candidates. And we will start with John. You will have 2 minutes for a closing statement, and there will be no rebuttals allowed for the closing statements. And John, take it away.
Thank you very much. In the past, it was an absolute honor to be able to serve the citizens of Yuba City as a council member, certainly as a police officer. I was able to do a number of things at the police department in my 32 years. And if you've ever gotten a ticket from one of the motor officers, you can thank me for that. Brought that program along. I know how to get funding for projects like that. The motor unit was funded entirely through grant money in the very beginning, and that was done in 1995. That is a thriving unit with the police department. There are a number of other things that occurred during my tenure at the police department. I wrote a number of grants totaling about $3.5 million in different components that improve the quality of life. People complain about speeding in their neighborhood. I used to stay up late at night because I was dedicated to working a lot of traffic at the time. And I developed overnight, woke up about 3 o'clock in the morning with a great thought and came up with a program called Neighborhood Speed Awareness. It wasn't a monetary project for the city. What we did was we stopped vehicles from speeding and we wrote them a ticket and then invited them to a class. And they would come and they would listen to an hour and a half of education on why you don't speed in the neighborhood. And it was an amazing program that was supported by our courts. So we could not have done it without working with others. So there's a lot of things that are in my past that I was able to accomplish, but the greatest honor was to be able to serve on the council and to be able to represent the citizens, and certainly look forward to doing that on a deeper sense in District 5.
Thank you, John. Tony?
I'll close with a short story. I encountered a 97-year-old man when I was walking homes last week, and he told me he was drafted to World War II and was supposed to ship off right when all the fighting had ended. It was in Europe in May, and he ended up not going, but we sat and chatted for 30 minutes, and I just thought, this man told me about how he moved to Yuba City in the 60s, and same with my grandparents, both brought here by way of the Air Force. So many military and vet have settled here and made this their home, and this city really has been built on their backs, and we can't bring that generation back, because I do believe they're the greatest. I'm a big history person, and it was so touching to speak with him, and I know that we can't bring that back, but I'd like to bring that culture back. And I'd really like to emulate that culture and that generation. It's so important that we have that. And I know I'm speaking abstract here, but if everybody believed that way, that we can be that and have that again and be a city of high achievement and high character, then that's what I want for us. I lived in New Orleans for a couple of years. And that's a city that no one leaves. They love their city and they have so much pride in it. And I brought some of that back with me. Sometimes it takes leaving home to realize what you have here. And I believe that we can be that too, with all of the different events and things to do. This should be a place that we are born and raised and that we want to stay and not leave. And so, I will speak just to my candidacy for a moment. I do offer a perspective that is new, and my scope is just eclectic and a little bit different. And so I hope to have all of your support. I currently have endorsements from the DA, from Sheriff Barnes, from Assemblyman James Gallagher, Doug LaMalfa, and all 5 council members. So thank you.
All right, so before I turn it over to Carolyn, I would like to, on behalf of Janelle and I, would like to thank all of you here in the city of Yuba City for the opportunity to moderate the debate tonight. It's been a great experience. But I'd also like to thank all of you for participating tonight, for submitting questions, and also to those that may be viewing online as well. But also to thank John and Tony. Running for elected office is not for the faint of heart. And actually sitting in this seat is certainly not for the faint of heart. And certainly challenges abound when for elected officials, regardless of jurisdiction. But you provide a great service when you're in that seat. But also, running for that office. So I also want to thank both of you for being respectful for the process tonight. Your sincerity really showed, both of you, and really want to thank you for being respectful to the process that we had. And finally, to wish you both the best of luck in the upcoming election. So Janelle, is there anything you'd like to add?
Show up at the polls. At this time, we are going to turn it back over to Carolyn Kirby. She is the chair of our GAC and a board member for the Chamber of Commerce.
Thank you for attending tonight's candidates forum for the candidates for Yuba City Council. Have a great rest of your week, and don't forget to vote November 5th.